2 million people downloaded a piece of software most of them had never even heard of 12 months ago. 800,000 of them came from one specific place, Windows. Not from curiosity, not from some tech hobby. They came because something inside their own computer stopped working the way it was supposed to. And here's the detail almost nobody caught. The one thing that turns this from a strange trend into something that looks deliberate. The exact week Windows 10 stopped receiving support, this replacement system launched. Fully built, fully polished, already sitting there, waiting. That kind of timing does not happen by accident. Big companies plan launches like that years in advance, the same way a chess player sets up a move 6 turns before you ever see it coming. So today we're answering 3 questions, one at a time, and I promise you the third one is the one that will actually keep you up tonight. What exactly did Microsoft do that pushed this many loyal customers out the door? What did this replacement get right that 30 years of failed attempts never managed to get right? And what does this tell us about where every major tech company you rely on is quietly heading next? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this isn't really a story about software at all. Let's go back to where this actually started, because the beginning matters more than most people realize. Windows 10 ran fine, fast, stable, no complaints from anyone. Then Microsoft announced the next version, and suddenly millions of perfectly working computers got labeled incompatible overnight. Not broken, not slow, not old and dying. Incompatible because of a tiny security chip called TPM 2.0 that almost nobody on Earth had heard of before that announcement. That's wall number 1. And we'll come back to exactly how many machines that wall destroyed in a few minutes, because the number is bigger than you think. Wall number 2 came right after. Even the people who did qualify for the upgrade got something they never asked for, an AI assistant permanently pinned to their taskbar, quietly running in the background of their own computer. And here's the wall that made people genuinely furious. Advertisements. Inside the Start menu, inside File Explorer, on an operating system people had already paid full price for. Then came the last wall, and it might be the cruelest one of all. Pay Microsoft every single year just to keep receiving basic security protection on hardware you already fully own. Buy a new computer, or give up more of your privacy, or pay rent up forever on a machine that's sitting right there on your desk. 3 doors. Every single one of them costs you something. And that's exactly why people started quietly looking for a 4th door, one Microsoft never expected anybody to find. We'll get to that 4th door in a moment. But first, you need to understand something Microsoft doesn't want people connecting to what happened next. Now here's a detail most coverage of this story completely skips, and it's the detail that changes everything. This isn't only about the people who got locked out of the upgrade, it's also about the people who did everything right. They bought the new laptop, they paid the extra money, they accepted the new terms without complaint, and a huge number of them are still miserable. Update after update has introduced new bugs instead of fixing old ones. File Explorer freezing mid-task. Search bars returning nothing useful. Settings resetting themselves after a simple restart. The AI features baked directly into the operating system are eating up memory and battery life on machines that used to run smooth for years without a single complaint. So sit with that for a second. Microsoft didn't just alienate the people it excluded with hardware requirements. It's now frustrating the people who stayed loyal and paid extra for the privilege of staying. This is a pattern, and it's one we've tracked on this channel before with other giant companies that assumed their customers had nowhere else to go. Kodak assumed that. Blockbuster assumed that. We'll come back to that comparison later in this video because it explains exactly what happens next to companies that make this mistake. This time, customers found somewhere else to go, and what they found surprised even people who'd given up on alternatives years ago. For 30 years, there's been an alternative to Windows sitting quietly in the background, mostly used by engineers and computer scientists. powerful, free, secure. But every single attempt to make it friendly for a regular person still felt foreign the moment you sat down in front of it. Different menus, different logic, a learning curve nobody in their 60s or 70s wanted to climb after a long day. This new system did something almost nobody expected. It put the start button exactly where a Windows user's muscle memory already expects it to be. The taskbar sits at the bottom, right where your eyes go first. The clock sits in the corner, right where it's always been. The whole layout feels familiar enough that your hand finds things before your brain even has to think about it. That single decision solves the one fear that kept an entire generation away from trying anything different. The fear of sitting down at your own computer and suddenly feeling lost in your own home. But don't mistake familiar for identical. This isn't a costume pretending to be Windows. It's still a completely different system underneath, just one that finally respects how much time people have already invested learning where everything lives. And the installation process backs that up completely. Click through a few screens, choose your language, click install. Wait a few minutes while it does the work for you. No command lines to memorize, no tutorial videos to watch first, no fear of breaking something you can't fix on your own. The single biggest excuse people use for decades that this kind of switch is too complicated for a normal person just quietly expired. And once that excuse disappeared, something else disappeared right along with it, something even bigger than convenience. Here's where the real story gets interesting, because the Surface interface is only half of what changed. No forced account just to use a computer you already own outright. No AI assistant quietly running in the background, learning your habits and reporting on them. No advertisements anywhere inside the operating system itself. None. Not one. Updates happen when you decide to install them, not when a company on the other side of the country decides for you. That's not a small convenience. That is the entire difference between owning a computer and simply renting access to one you already paid full price for. And here's the number that should matter most if you're running a machine that's a few years old. This new system uses less memory sitting idle than Windows 11 does on the exact same hardware. Machines that felt sluggish and outdated for the last 2 years suddenly feel responsive again, almost brand new. There's no unidentified background process quietly draining your battery, your patience, or your personal data while you're just trying to check your email. Old hardware that one company officially declared dead is, under this new system, very much alive and working exactly the way it always did, which brings us to a number so large it's genuinely difficult to picture in your head. And in the next chapter, we're going to try anyway, because once you see this number, you'll understand why this story is bigger than any one operating system. Analysts estimate 240 million computers were rendered obsolete by the hardware requirements of the newest version of Windows. Let that number sit for a second. That's 1 out of every 5 computers on the entire planet declared unwelcome by a decision made in a single corporate meeting room, likely in under an hour. If you stacked every one of those machines flat, one on top of the other, the pile would reach roughly 600 kilometers into the sky, past the edge of space, on its way toward the moon. These aren't broken machines sitting in a junk drawer. They browse the internet just fine. They run spreadsheets just fine. They do everything a normal person actually needs a computer to do every single day. Researchers estimate the resulting electronic waste from this one decision could exceed 1 billion pounds. Lead, mercury, and cadmium leaching quietly into landfill soil for decades after you and I are gone. And during all of this, the very same company has spent years publishing sustainability pledges and carbon-neutral commitments to shareholders and the public. You simply cannot claim to be saving the planet while quietly manufacturing a mountain of dead hardware taller than any structure human beings have ever built. Every single one of those 240 million machines can run this new alternative system instead. No exceptions, no fine print. If that kind of contradiction bothers you as much as it bothers us, that's exactly the kind of corporate story we dig into every week on this channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good moment, because the next part of this story connects directly to something we're about to cover in an upcoming video about a completely different industry making this same mistake right now. Analysts estimate 240 million computers were rendered obsolete by the hardware requirements of the newest version of Windows. Let that number sit for a second. That's 1 out of every 5 computers on the entire planet declared unwelcome by a decision made in a single corporate meeting room, likely in under an hour. If you stacked every one of those machines flat, one on top of the other, the pile would reach roughly 600 kilometers into the sky, past the edge of space, on its way toward the moon. These aren't broken machines sitting in a junk drawer. They browse the internet just fine. They run spreadsheets just fine. They do everything a normal person actually needs a computer to do every single day. Researchers estimate the resulting electronic waste from this one decision could exceed 1 billion pounds. Lead, mercury, and cadmium leaching quietly into landfill soil for decades after you and I are gone. And during all of this, the very same company has spent years publishing sustainability pledges and carbon-neutral commitments to shareholders and the public. You simply cannot claim to be saving the planet while quietly manufacturing a mountain of dead hardware taller than any structure human beings have ever built. Every single one of those 240 million machines can run this new alternative system instead. No exceptions, no fine print. If that kind of contradiction bothers you as much as it bothers us, that's exactly the kind of corporate story we dig into every week on this channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good moment, because the next part of this story connects directly to something we're about to cover in an upcoming video about a completely different industry making this same mistake right now. Now let's slow down for a moment, because the full truth matters more than the excitement, and we owe you that honesty. Gaming on this new system is improving quickly, but it's still not a perfect match for Windows in every single case. Some titles run beautifully without a single hiccup. Others still stutter or refuse to launch entirely. If gaming is your absolute top priority, there are more specialized options built specifically for that purpose. There's also a paid version of the system, with extra layout options and some pre-installed extras bundled in. Worth knowing up front, much of what it offers is available completely free elsewhere if you're willing to spend 20 minutes setting it up yourself. It's not a scam by any measure, it's simply a convenience fee, and whether it's worth paying depends entirely on how much your own time is worth to you personally. And brand new laptops, fresh off the shelf this month, may take a few months before every single driver works flawlessly. If you just bought new hardware, it's worth giving the ecosystem some time to catch up before making the switch. None of that erases the bigger picture we've built throughout this video. It just means you go in with your eyes wide open, which is genuinely more honesty than most companies ever offer their own paying customers. Here's the conclusion worth sitting with, because this story is bigger than one operating system and bigger than one company. This didn't happen because a scrappy competitor out-innovated Microsoft with some brilliant piece of engineering. It happened because Microsoft made a series of deliberate choices that treated years of customer loyalty like leverage instead of like a relationship worth protecting. Hardware restrictions that expired perfectly, working machines on purpose. Data collection nobody asked for or consented to. Advertising inserted into a product people had already paid for in full. A subscription paywall disguised as a basic security update. Every single one of those choices rested on one quiet assumption that customers simply had nowhere else to go. That assumption has been wrong before, in other industries, with other household names that mistook a captive market for a loyal one. right up until the moment an alternative became good enough for a regular person to use without reading a manual first. 2 million downloads in 3 months isn't a fluke, and it isn't luck either. It's a measurement. It tells you precisely how much frustration had been quietly building underneath the surface, waiting patiently for a door that didn't require relearning everything you'd spent years getting comfortable with. The real lesson buried inside this entire story isn't really about Linux or about Windows or even about one single company headquartered in Redmond. It's about what happens every single time when a corporation decides its customers are locked in rather than earned through actual value. Eventually somebody builds the door and people walk through it faster than anyone sitting in that boardroom ever expected them to. We've watched this exact pattern play out before in industries that had nothing to do with computers at all. And in our next video, we're going to show you which company we believe is about to make this exact same mistake in an industry you use every single day without thinking twice about it. If you want to see that story the moment it goes live, subscribe now, because what you just watched tonight isn't really the ending of anything. It's the opening chapter of a pattern that's about to repeat itself somewhere else entirely.